I hacked a bank.
I hacked a bank.
I did it to give an injection of liquidity, but this time from below and to the simple and humble people who resist and rebel against injustices throughout the world.
In other words, I robbed a bank and gave away the money. But it wasn't me alone who did it.
The free software movement, the offensive PowerShell community, the Metasploit project and the hacker community in general are what made this hack possible. The community at Exploit-In made it possible to convert intrusion into a bank's computers into cash and Bitcoin.
The Tor, Cubes and Vonix projects, together with the cryptographers and activists who defend privacy and anonymity, are my protectors. They accompany me every night and make it possible for me to remain free.
The police will invest a chingo of resources to investigate me. They think the system works, or at least it will work once they catch all the bad boys. I am nothing more than a product of a system that doesn't work.
To be seen, we cover our faces. To make you listen, hackers sometimes have to cover their faces because we are not interested in you seeing our face, but instead in understanding our word. Many of those who support my actions may pay too much attention to my person. With their own autonomy shattered for a lifetime of domination, they will be looking for a leader to follow, or a hero who saves them.
But behind the balaclava, I'm just a girl. We are all wild children. We just have to put a burning star to our hearts. In the digital age, robbing a bank is a non-violent act. So why are only black hat hackers doing it for their own personal benefit and never hacktivists to finance radical projects? It's not that complicated. Being able to see how vulnerable and fragile the financial system really is helps us break that collective delusion. That is why banks have a strong incentive not to report hacks and to exaggerate how sophisticated the attackers are. None of the financial hacks I made, or those I've known, have ever been reported. This is going to be the first, and not because the bank wanted to, but because I decided to publish it. In Trump's words, unless you catch hackers in the act, it is difficult to determine who was doing the hacking. So the police are getting more and more creative. Many blame queer people for the decline of this society. We take pride in this. Some believe we intend to shred to bits this civilization and its moral fabric. They couldn't be more right. They often describe us as depraved, decadent, and revolting. But oh, they haven't seen anything yet. I hope that this guide is a recipe you can follow, combining the same ingredients to bake the same cake. They who rob a thief get 100 years of forgiveness. I had no idea what I was doing, so I was discovering it all along the way. It is possible to hack banks as an amateur who works alone, but it is not as easy as I painted here. I was lucky with this bank for several reasons. They only used password authentication to access their application for connecting to the SWIFT network. Most banks now use RSA Secure ID or some form of 2FA. This can be bypassed by writing code to alert you when they enter their token, so you can use it before it expires. It's simpler than it sounds. I used
get keystrokes modified not to store keylocks, but just to, when it detects their username being typed, make a get request to my server with their username appended to the URL, and as they type the token, several gets are made with the digits of the token appended to the URL.
Getting in. This was not a targeted attack. I did not set out to hack a specific bank. What I wanted was to hack any bank, which ends up being a much simpler task. This type of non-specific approach was popularized by Lulzsec and Anonymous. I prepared an exploit and post-exploitation tool for a popular VPN device. Then I started scanning the entire internet with ZMap and zgrep to identify other vulnerable devices. I had the scanner save the vulnerable IPs along with the common and alternative names of the device's SSL certificate, the device's Windows domain names, and the reverse DNS lookup of the IP. I grabbed the results for the word bang, and there were plenty to choose from. But the truth is that I was attracted to the word Cayman, and that's how I came to choose this one bank.
PowerShell. In this operation, I used a lot of PowerShell. Then, PowerShell was super cool and you could do almost anything you wanted without antivirus detection and with very little forensic footprint. It happens that with the introduction of AMSI, offensive PowerShell is retiring. The specific tools and techniques change every few years, but basically it is not much what changes. Today, hacking is essentially the same thing it was in the 90s. In fact, all the PowerShell scripts used in this guide are still perfectly usable today after a little adjustment of your own.
The exploit. In my last guide, many read that I spent many weeks researching a device until I found an exploit and assumed that it meant that I was some kind of elite hacker. The reality, that is, the fact that it took me 2 weeks to realize that it was trivially exploitable with shell shock is perhaps less flattering to me, but I think it is also more inspiring. Shows that you can really do this for yourself. You don't need to be a genius. I certainly am not. You don't even need great technical knowledge. You just need dedication and believe in yourself.
The backdoor. Part of the backdoor I prepared for Hacking Team was a simple wrapper on the login page to capture passwords. In the case of Hacking Team, they were logging onto the VPN with single-use passwords, so the VPN gave me access only to the network, and from there it took an extra effort to get the main admins on the network. This is the easy part. The most complicated part is to understand how they operate and how to get what you want out of their network.
I also searched emails from employees, but by far the most useful technique was to use keyloggers and screenshots to see how bank employees worked. I didn't know it at the time, but Windows comes with a great built-in monitoring tool for this. They were using a remote Citrix app to access the Swift network, where each payment message had to go through 3 employees. One to create the message, one to verify it, and another to authorize it. Since I already had all the credentials, thanks to the keylogger, I could easily perform all 3 steps myself. When PwC started investigating the hack, they found my use of Empire and Interpreter and cleaned those computers and blocked those IPs, but they didn't detect my backup access. PwC had placed network monitoring devices in order to analyze the traffic and see if there were still infected computers, so I didn't want to connect to their network much. I just ran Mimikatz once to get their fresh passwords and then followed along their investigation by reading their emails in Outlook Web Access.
Somehow, the first transfers I sent went well. The next day I screwed up by sending a transfer to Mexico that ended my fun. The bank got an error message back. They read the messages, investigated it, and found the rest of my wire transfers.
Fun fact, the bank could have been compromised by someone else through a targeted phishing email. As the old saying goes, give them an exploit and they will have access for a day. teach them how to fish, and they will have access for life.
I would not like to see anyone in legal trouble for receiving expropriate funds, so not another word of where the money went. I know that journalists are probably going to want to put some number on how many dollars were distributed in this hack and similar ones, but I prefer not to encourage our perverse habit of measuring actions just by their economic value.
Once you're comfortable with all that, you'll be ready to hack 99% of all companies. Some things that will help you a lot are getting comfortable with Bash and Command X, basic proficiency in PowerShell, Python and JavaScript, gaining knowledge of Kerberos and Active Directory, and fluency in English.
A good introductory book is The Hacker Playbook.
I did nothing complicated. I was a girl raised by the internet. I only saw the injustice in this world, felt love for all beings, and expressed that love in the best way I could, through the tools I know how to use.
The story is ours.
And it is done by hackers.
You don't start hacking well.
You start out hacking like crap, thinking it's good, and then gradually you get better at it. That is why I always say that the one but most valuable virtue is persistence.
Willie Sutton is frequently quoted as saying that he robbed banks because that's where the money is.
But the quote is incorrect. What he really said was, why did I rob banks? Because I enjoyed it. I loved to do it. I was more alive when I was inside a bank, in full robbery, than at any other time in my life.
Hacking has made me feel alive. Later, I realized I could do something positive with it. Hacking done with conscience can also be what heals us.
If you feel that hacking is feeding your isolation, depression, or other suffering, breathe. Give yourself some time and become aware. You deserve to live happily, in good health, and to the fullest.
All cows are beautiful.
Almost all hacking today is done by black hat hackers for personal gain, or by white hat hackers for the benefit of the shareholders, and by military and intelligence agencies as part of war or conflict.
Bash back.
Financial sector, fuck off.
Privacy for the weak, transparency for the powerful.
Offshore banking provides executives, politicians and millionaires with privacy from their own government. Exposing them may sound hypocritical on my part, since I'm generally in favor of privacy and against government surveillance.
However, the law was already written by and for the rich to protect their system of exploitation with some limits, such as taxes, so that society can function, and their system does not collapse under the weight of their own greed.
So no, privacy is not the same for the powerful, when it allows them to evade the limits of a system designed to give them privileges, and privacy for the weak, whom it protects from a system designed to exploit them.
As Lucy Parsons says, let us never be fooled that the rich will let us vote to take away their wealth.
What do they risk besides their privilege? If all their venture fails, they will have to live and work like the rest of us.
Our world is upside down.
We have a justice system that represents injustice.
As long as there's injustice, exploitation, alienation, violence, and ecological destruction, many more will come like me.
An endless series of people will reject as illegitimate the system responsible for such suffering.
Arresting me won't fix their broken system.
It would be typical to end a hacker sign saying, "Release Hammond, release Manning, release Hamza."
I am going to take this tradition to its most radical conclusion and say, abolish prisons now.
Being a criminal myself, you might feel that I have a slightly biased view of the matter.
So, once and for all, free migrants, often imprisoned by those same countries that created the war and the environmental and economic destruction they are fleeing from.
Free those imprisoned because of the war on drugs.
Free all people imprisoned in the war against the poor. Prisons are about hiding and ignoring the evidence of social problems rather than genuinely fixing them.
And until everyone is free, fight the prison system by remembering and keeping in mind those who are trapped in there.
Send them love, letters, helicopters, pirate radios, and books.
The cultural, political, and economic system in which we live encourages the worst facets of human nature.
Greed, selfishness, and self-centeredness.
Competitiveness, lack of compassion, and attachment to authority.
So, for those who have managed to remain sensitive and compassionate in a cold world, for all the everyday heroines that practice goodness and small things, for all of you who still have a star burning in your hearts, I am a white child, innocent, free, white. I am all ages, my grandparents live on in me. I am a sister of the clouds, and I only know how to share. I know that everything belongs to everyone, that everything is alive in me. My heart is a star, I am the son of the earth, traveling aboard my spirit, I walk to eternity. To be seen, we cover our faces.